All right, what's up? Good morning, everybody. Good to see you on this Thursday. Happy Thursday. I buzzed off a lot of the beard, so I hope I'm not freaking anybody out, but wanted to, that was a long time of having a lot on my face, so thought I'd take it down a notch and see where that goes. So I hope everyone's doing well. A lot going on in the world. Next weekend, we're going to be in Lexington, Kentucky, doing our lumbar spine course. So I'll be down there with Zach and Kristen and a whole crew. So that'll be great. The ice sampler's coming up. So all of us are getting ready to go to Vegas. Got a bunch of emails last night. Everyone's making their flights to get out there. So if you want to meet the whole ICE crew and hang out with us and learn about fitness athletes and dancing and older adult management and spinal thrust manipulation, pain science, the list goes on and on, population health management, rehab of the injured runner, we're all going to be there in Las Vegas teaching all this content. So if you want to kind of network with the whole ICE team, the first weekend of April is your opportunity. So hop on there, ptonice.com, and look at that sampler. So guys, this morning I want to chat about slow growth. So I do a lot of mentoring around the country now. So I'm in a lot of different clinics, working with a lot of new clinicians, a lot of more seasoned clinicians. And one thing I hear oftentimes is people being frustrated that things aren't growing fast enough. There's kind of this sense of discontent or this urgency that people want things to grow faster. And I can certainly appreciate that. I mean, my whole life, I've always felt kind of that competitive urge to grow and thrive and prosper and see results quickly. But I think that there's time to take a breather and not only come to peace with, but realize why slow growth has distinct advantages. Right? And I think this can be something that when you feel like, oh man, I feel like I'm stuck in the mud and the next piece isn't coming fast enough, this might be something you can reflect on and really think about, do I really want it to? Like I know reflexively I want it to, but when I really think about it and reason through it, do I really want it to? So a few reasons that I think slow growth is important and in many cases preferred, right? The first one is your first product is generally your worst product. Right? I mean, unless you're not taking feedback in any constructive manner, right? But if you are, when you first launch your first edition or your first product, or you first start a new profession or a new skill, that should be your worst quality product. The reason being that once you start launching it, you can begin seeking feedback from folks, right? And through that feedback, refining that product. Right? Now, if you're not seeking feedback, right? So what we often say that, 1 year repeated 10 times is not 10 years of experience, it's one, right? But if you're actually engaging in reflective practice or reflective business, when you offer something, you're seeking feedback, you're fine-tuning your message, you're fine-tuning your product, you're fine-tuning based upon high-quality feedback from people you respect. If you're doing that, your product is going to get better every single time you offer it. So thus, it stands to reason that the very first time you offer it, or the very beginning, your initial offerings, that is your worst quality product. Is that really the product that you want a ton of people to see? Right? That answer is generally no. Right? You want to refine your product in the early stages. This doesn't matter if it's your clinical practice or actual content or what have you. You want to refine your offering, and then as your audience grows, your offering is getting better. And as you have more people viewing it and using it, the actual quality of it is better. So it actually gets some legs because you have more pleased customers, right? So just think about the fact that if you have some humility, right, early on, your offering is not yet refined to the point where it's going to be a year or two from now, 2 years from now. It's also the least efficient, right? So if you grow slowly, hey, what's up, Lisa? Good morning. If you grow slowly, the demands of you to make each offering more efficient. Think about it with patient care. So if you're in a PT clinic or you're in rehab, right? If you go from having 7 people on your schedule to having 18 people on your schedule overnight, you're going to, first of all, have to trim the fat somewhere. But you don't really know what's fat yet because it's never been demanded of you to make yourself that much more efficient. However, if you slowly increase the boil, right, over a few month period, you're going to find areas where you can trim the process and make it more efficient without losing quality. Right, so you're going to see areas where you can trim the fat but maintain quality control. But that only happens when you have a chance to actually try trimming a little bit, trial and error. How did that affect the process? Reflecting on that, try trimming somewhere else, and pretty soon you realize how you can be more efficient. But it only works like that if you're growing slowly. If it all happens at once, you're just going to grab a knife and hack that part of the meat off, and you don't know if you reduced quality or not until you get a barrage of feedback. So arguably, in the early process, in your earliest offerings, your product is both lower in quality and lower in efficiency than it's going to be down the road as you refine with reflective feedback. And so that's one good reason that embracing slow growth has a lot of wisdom to it. Okay? Number two, you don't know what you're good at. You only think you know what you're good at the very beginning of the process. And again, this all comes down to utilizing high quality feedback. So we talk a lot about, running a teaching company, we talk a lot about the process of teaching and what makes for high quality teaching. And one thing I emphasize a lot is that the Q&A drives the class. Right? The Q&A, the question and answer session, is the most important part of offering a good lecture or a course. Why is that? The reason for that is it's when you figure out what people really want to hear. Right? So think about that. When you're organizing a lecture or a course or what have you, you're putting together what you think the audience is going to benefit from. What you think. You're guessing. With all due respect, you're guessing. Now, you've got a lot of good criteria. You know people from different... There's good ways you're working to put that material together. But at the end of the day, you are putting together content that you hope that the audience is going to be receptive to and benefit from. However, when you open up a good Q&A session, right? And again, we talk a lot about with our instructors how that takes a while, right? So when you're doing Q&A, no one ever throws that hand up in the first 2 seconds. You've got to be willing to kind of stand there and let things be awkward and wait for that first question to show up. But once it does, I promise you questions are going to show up from all over the room. The beauty of the questions showing up is now the audience is actually telling you what they want to hear, what they need to hear. They're saying, Jeff, I heard you, right? In my clinic, here's what's going on. How would you adjust it to make it relevant for that setting? And now you're answering a question that's actually going to be deeply valuable to that person because it's individually relevant, right? You're actually answering a question that is going to allow the information you've been presenting to be useful for someone because you're answering the key nuances of their individual environment. Right? When people during that Q&A say, hey, is there any chance over the weekend you could speak to blank, right? Because that's really where I feel lost. And you look at your presentation and it wasn't really a focus, but now you can easily turn your material to meet that need. And 3 other people in the class say, oh yeah, I'd love to hear more about that as well, right? The point is that as you're doing this Q&A, you are going from having prepackaged material that you're hoping that people want to hear to being able to deliver the material you know they need to hear. And that's a huge change. The same is true for I look at Q&A like I look at the refinement of any product, right? So as you're going forward, people are giving you feedback of, hey, this really benefited me. And they're probably giving you that months down the road, right? They're probably saying, hey, you really got rid of my headache for good when you did blank. Or, hey, what you said in that class really carried over into my practice, right, because of X, Y, and Z. But you're hearing that feedback usually a ways down the road. And that feedback is letting you know the things that you were doing that were truly transformative, right? So again, it's all about getting that feedback, reflecting on that, processing that, and allowing that to refine your process that lets you know, hey, what am I really doing that is of significant value? What is of unique value that I'm doing? And then you can leverage towards that. But until you know that, you only think you know that. You're taking your best guess at what you can do that's going to offer considerable value, but you haven't heard back yet what actually offered considerable value. Once you know the second one, you can put a lot of your resources towards growing in that particular area where you seem to have unique skill, content, and value, right? So because you don't know what you're good at first, you're only guessing what you're good at, right? That's another really good reason to embrace slow growth, right? The final one, arguably the most important, is that growth requires staff and staff requires time. So when people talk to us about how do you add an additional staff member, My answer is always slowly. I answer that with one word. We do it slowly. So when we were in clinic in Michigan, when we were growing staff members, multidisciplinary PTs, PTAs, ATCs, how were we doing that? Well, we were taking students, right? So I always call it the 12-week interview, right? One really great reason as a clinician to take students is because you get to see them and work with them for 12 weeks. You get to see how much you miss them when they go, right? And so it's the ultimate 12-week interview. And so we were grabbing students after having worked with them for months and months. I can't think of a better way to hire clinicians for your clinic than to have them for 3 or 6 months as students and know them inside and out, how they process, who they are as a person, and then you bring them on knowing what you're going to get. Right? So that's the kind of slow hiring process that allows you to bring in people that you know you're going to feel great around because you already have. Right? Now, not everyone has that luxury, but I would still argue when it comes to hiring, there is nothing like patience, right? There's nothing like making the opportunity to actually spend time with people and get an idea of who that person is as a person and as a professional and do that repetitively. And again, reflect on the experience, right? That allows you to hire only the highest quality people that are honestly a culture fit for your organization. Right? So, I mean, growth is going to demand increased staff, but quality of increased staff demands time. It demands relationship building. You can't know if someone's a good culture fit until you have a pretty darn good idea of where they're coming from as a person, right? So the simple necessity of high quality hiring requiring time requires slow growth. Right? So those to me are 3 really big reasons why growing slowly has distinct advantages, right? Number 1, your first product is usually your worst product from both a quality perspective and an efficiency perspective. Number 2, you don't know what you're good at the beginning, right? You only know what you think you're good at. People are going to let you know what you're good at as time goes on if you're willing to open up and listen to them and refine your approach as you're getting repetitions. And number 3, growing requires staffing, and staffing requires time because quality staffing requires relationship building. You're looking for culture fits, not just talent and content. So those things, those 3 key reasons I think are good things to reflect on if you feel like, man, I'm not growing as fast as I want to. Well, maybe think about these 3 things and some of the benefits of the fact that you're marinating a bit. I mean, slow is better in everything, right? Think about slow cooking, right? Think about throwing some meat on the smoker and how much, that low and slow grind that creates that meat off the bone feeling. Think about loading soft tissue, right? Progressive load, slow progressive load. You want it to be sequential, right? We talked about recently the acute on chronic workload with Tim Gavitt, right? It's slow progressive load that seems to really create enduring benefits. Think about growing your business the same way you think about developing your tendons, right? You want to have a very, very slight increase all the time, consistently, so you develop a more robust underlying foundational system. All right. I hope there's some value there. I think it's something I get all the time. Hey, Jeff, how do I grow faster? Well, why don't we think about how do you grow better? And maybe from there, we can create something you're really proud of. All right, guys. Have a great Thursday. It was great being here with you. Leor and Jeremy, I buzzed her off the other day. I'll probably grow the beard back out here pretty soon, but feels really nice not to have quite so much on the old noggin. All right, guys. Have a killer rest of the day.